Servus and welcome to another episode of the Pro Hockey Pod, episode 74. Back to our coaches series. We had a couple weeks off there, but now we're back into it. This week, lucky to have on the University of Alberta's head coach here. He himself had a long playing career coming up through the WHL, then going to the University of Alberta himself before embarking on a pro career, which ended up being as well the NHL. And I'm very curious to talk to him about his experience there. He's been both a player in the NHL and a coach. Played in leagues that obviously don't exist anymore either, and actually, funny enough, has played with some guys who are now very known in Germany. But we'll get to that later in the episode. Happy to have him on this week. Head coach at University of Alberta, Ian Herbers.
Hey, thank you. My pleasure being on.
Um, Always start off the same way here, so I kind of like to take it back to the roots there. Going off elite prospects, I believe you were born in Jasper, Alberta, or somewhere in the area. What's kind of your earliest childhood memory of growing up there?
I didn't live in Jasper very long. I think maybe under a year or so. My family obviously was there a few more years. Fantastic place. We had the fires though this past summer, so it's changed things a little bit. But before that, I used to go to Jasper all the time, especially when I was playing with the Oilers or NHL or IHL or American Hockey League, and would go back and train. And we'd rent a little cabin on the river, and I'd do my last 2 weeks of training there and up in the mountains, biking, running, find a little weight room and stuff like that, and get my workouts in and get that elevation training. But Jasper's a fantastic place and a fond place for me, and always like getting back there anytime I can.
Being a Canadian myself, I feel like this is an obvious answer to the question I'm about to ask. But what kind of drew you to the sport of hockey? I mean, you would know as Canadians, we're skating before we can walk. Was it something similar for you?
Yeah, I don't remember how, or my older brother played, my younger brother played, and it just seemed like just when it was time to start playing. All the schools had outdoor rinks, all the elementary, junior high schools. So I always remember at lunchtime and at recess time, there'd be a bunch of us going out there just with our boots on and kicking snowballs around on the ice and everything else. So it was good because after school we could put our skates on and play shinny, and just whoever was there showing up, you'd have kids that were 4 or 5 years older, kids maybe a few years younger than you, a wide discrepancy in talent and skill level. And you had an opportunity just to go out and play and have fun and compete and work on your skill. And there was no structure, there was no officials, there was no coach pulling you on or off or telling you what else to do. I guess my youngest, though, remembering my organized hockey, was we used to little guys, mini mites or whatever it was called back then. The name's changed a few times now. We used to play cross ice, and they take the plexiglass out on the sides, and fathers would lift the kids over the boards and on, and the next group would go out, and they'd have the dividers at the blue line, and we'd play cross ice, which is fantastic because you know not skating the whole ice, and you're using the cross ice, you're touching the puck more tight turns, more agility, more mobility. So I thought that was fantastic, and hopefully they keep staying with that model.
I think too, just based on when you are at that age as a mite, like you don't really understand the positional game yet. It's more, wherever the puck goes, the whole group goes. So they probably wanted to keep it in a small area there, so it kept it more fun for the kids.
Yeah,
Um,
it's just like 10 kids just chasing a puck around, but it's good. You got your compete and your battle of puck skills. Obviously, one's a little better, got a little more puck touches, but at least there was an opportunity because it wasn't the entire ice surface.
I always like to ask this to someone who's had siblings who played as well. You mentioned you had an older brother and then a younger brother. You being the middle child. Did you sometimes have to sacrifice and go a net for when the older brother wanted to play like street hockey or something, and then it obviously went down to your younger brother, or did you guys just have a system that you kind of rotated with?
Well, my older brother ended up being a goalie.
Oh,
His skating wasn't that great, so they stuck him in net. My younger brother was a forward, and I was started at forward, but when I was younger, I was only about one of the kids that could skate backwards, so I was moved back to defense. But when we played street hockey and everything, it'd mix it up. A lot of times I was in goal. I enjoyed playing goal. Um, my older brother didn't play street hockey, didn't play goal as much. So on that time, it was mostly me or my younger brother in that in those situations.
being a goalie myself, anytime I could take a break from being an actual goalie, whether it was street hockey, roller hockey, summer hockey, I know I was the first guy to volunteer to be center, some just so I could buzz around out there. And a lot of
Yeah,
players too,
that's
they
what it
want to go
seems
in net,
like.
right?
Yeah, that's what it seems like. A lot of guys that are in net that had enough shots at their heads and everywhere else that they time to repay some people and that. So,
Exactly. 9 months of it is enough each year. What was kind of the minor hockey like path for you and maybe structure for you growing up there in Alberta?
like you said, we started young. I don't even remember when I first put on skates, but it almost feels like when I was first walking and everything else, and then just playing the rec hockey and then minor hockey. For me, growing up, I did most of my youth hockey in Sherwood Park, which is just outside of Edmonton, a little hockey community, and I never played AAA until I hit midget, so I was always playing AA. Which gave me a chance to play other sports growing up. So I played some football when I got older into high school. I played baseball, I played soccer, basketball, volleyball in the junior high through there. And so it gave me those chances and opportunities to do other things. When I finally worked my way up to the AAA in midget, Ken Hitchcock was our midget coach. It was his last 2 years coaching the midget AAA team and ended up making the team in great 2 years. Both years we went to the Air Canada Cup at those times, and then worked my way into the Western Hockey League from there. But pretty much my youth hockey was all spent in Sherwood Park.
And one point that I think is kind of cool about, you growing up is, and I think it was the same for me, like we had a lot of focus of the CHL. So for you, it would have been the WHL. For me in Ontario was the OHL. As you mentioned, you ended up going the WHL route. Had there ever been a thought about maybe the other route, the NCAA route, or back when you were playing, like everyone basically focused on, hey, I want to get to the highest junior level I can, and that in your area was the WHL?
And to be honest, in that growing up, I never really thought about that. It was more I just enjoyed playing, enjoyed hanging out with the guys, with the teams and the groups that we had. Like I said, I never played AAA until midget, so AA there was a little more time to do other things, other sports, other activities. For me, I just enjoyed being on the ice and competing and playing and getting better every day, and just the team, being in that team atmosphere and that team environment. That was a big thing for me. And for me, I just kept getting better, kept improving, kept working my way up, kept getting some opportunities. And next thing you know, I'm playing in the Western Hockey League. And when I was Pee Wee or Bantam, I never really thought about playing Western Hockey League or National Hockey League. Next thing you know, I'm playing in the Hockey League, getting drafted by Buffalo. Injured my last year in junior. Couldn't go on play pro career. Luckily, my grades were good enough, and I went to the U of A. Got my degree from there, and went and played pro out of the U of A. So for me, I just wanted to be on the ice, love the game, passion for the game, keep getting better. Like I said, the fantastic people that I've had a chance to meet and play with and against are all the big things for me.
Before we get to you getting drafted, which obviously is a tremendous achievement, everyone growing up playing hockey dreams of that. I wanted to ask you, how was the jump for you from, as you mentioned, you played double A all the way up until midget, then you go up to triple A, and then you end up going to WHL. So how was that like adjustment for you, like the high rise at obviously such a short amount of time?
Just like I said, I just went to the rink and just did my best and never really put much thought into it, and just went to Kelowna Wings. Back then was the Western Hockey League team that moved to the franchise is now the Spokane Chiefs. Went to training camp. Wasn't really sure what to expect in Western Hockey League. Back then it was, I guess I'll say, a little bit more of an aggressive league. And a couple fights in training camp, played well, some exhibition games, and next thing they're saying I'm on the team in the top six, and our defenseman coach is for the home opener saying this is a group of D for the season, and I just kept moving on from there. And another great group of guys that I played with there. Obviously, Kelowna, a fantastic city. And just that's the way it was for me. I didn't really focus on that. It was just come to the rink and do the best I can, and what happens, happens.
That's probably a very good mindset to have. And I feel like not so many athletes might have that today where you're just kind of enjoying the moment, being with your teammates, as you said, working hard every day, playing the game that you love. I feel like today a lot of people put like a lot of pressure maybe on themselves or have pressure from outside sources where that takes some of the enjoyment away from it. But as I mentioned, you
Well,
end up
for a
getting drafted
player,
too. Sorry?
Yeah, well, for a player, you don't get to control much, just your work ethic and your attitude.
Yep.
I tell our guys that all right now with the Golden Bears that go out, have fun, work your hardest off, and what happens, happens. At least now you have nothing to hang your head on or whatever, looking back and saying, tried my best and worked hard, had fun at it, and what happened and happened. And fortunately for me, a lot of good things have happened over my career.
Well, it seems like a good mindset to have then. You got the recipe for success. As you mentioned before, and as I stated, you end up getting drafted there to the NHL. Had you expected that, like, or were you just again kind of going with the flow, playing, and just got to see your
I
name
think I was
called?
out playing softball somewhere, somebody called me saying I was drafted, not even my family or not Buffalo or anything else like that. And just heard from second hand or third hand the next day or whatever. I get the contacted from Buffalo, and back then I think there was 12 rounds in the draft, so I was taken obviously very late in the draft and uh, didn't really think about it. And next thing you know, I'm going off to Buffalo's camp and stuff. So it was my 19-year-old. I was ended up being drafted by them. Had a good playoffs a year before. Played well. Got a lot of exposure and experience, I guess, at that time, and same thing, went to Buffalo camp and enjoyed my time there.
Was it eye-opening at all? Like I always like to ask people who went to their first NHL camp, like it is it a shock or is it again like you seem like a guy that wasn't very affected by much. You just kind of went where you were supposed to and did what you did.
Yeah, there was, well, obviously it's elite level skill and a ton of forwards, defensemen, and back then there was no time limit that you could be at camp. So we were skating in the morning, working out, scrimmage in the afternoon, and it felt like we were at the rink all day. So a lot of it back in those days was survival and getting through, especially for a young player and making impressions. And then you'd play if you're lucky, you got into an exhibition game here or there, or you're sent down the American Hockey League and got some exhibition games there. So for me, it was kind of the same mode for me. I just wanted to make my work as hard as I can, enjoy my time there, pick up, learn as much as I could, become a better player. I've sent back that year from the American Hockey League, had a chance to stay, went back to junior, had a strong year, and that's when I ended up getting injured, so couldn't go back to Buffalo or Rochester at that time.
And as you mentioned, you ended up going to school there, and doing your 4 years there. When you came out, like I don't know what the rules are like back then. Did Buffalo still have your rights, or did you become a free agent then?
Yeah, Buffalo had my rights for that summer. I wasn't able to play. I had a bad Charlie horse and a big calcification in my thigh. Wasn't even sure if I was going to be able to start at university that next fall as well. But things progressed later on, so I didn't go to any of the camps. Went to U of A, made the Bears program, a very talented team at that time. I had Coach Drake, Claire Drake, as my head coach, and Coach Bill Morse as my assistant coach. So two fantastic coaches. As I said, I've been very fortunate in that front. I had Ken Hitchcock for a midget coach, and then these two guys for my university coach. After my first year, I went to Winnipeg's camp. They wanted me to go down the American Hockey League, and I said, no, I'll go finish my degree at the U of A. After the second year, Hitchcock called me when he was with the Flyers at that point. Come to Flyers camp. I actually thought it was somebody joking and I hung up on him because it was 6 in the morning or whatever. Hitch forgot about the time change. Hung up on him. He calls me back, Herbie, it's Hitch. And so went to Flyers camp, same thing, American Hockey League. They wanted to stick around there. So I came back, finished school. Nothing after my third year. We won a national championship. My fourth year, I was the captain of the Bears team. And the Oilers invited me to their development camp in the summertime, and I was enrolled in education after degree so I could play my fifth year with the Bears. And they offered me an NHL contract that spring.
Quite a quite a whirlwind over a couple of years there. But the one thing I want to talk to you about your playing time at University of Alberta, as you mentioned, you win a championship there. Like maybe talk about that season, and obviously there must be some memories or experiences that definitely stand out to you to have a good way to end your year there with being the champions.
Yeah, well, it was actually Regina was the top team in our league at that time. We had to go into Regina and beat them in the finals. They had a very strong line, so our team came together at the right time. We had our bumps and lumps during the season. We were a fairly young team, but we had a good set of defensemen. all our D were 6'4" or more. We had Corey Cross that played a number of games in the National Hockey League. Garth Premack, who was a fantastic defenseman, played a little bit of minor pro. Mike Moore, who's probably the smartest of all of us, is an accountant and making a ton of money. I think he's retired now. Stan Marple, who I work with, he's the GM here for the program, and he was our smallest D, but he was probably our feistiest D out of all of us. And then also Serge Lajoie, 6'3", 6'4" defenseman. And so we were big at the back end, fairly skilled. We had a good mixture in depth of players up front. We had some talent, some skill, guys that competed, guys that penalty kill. It was a fun group to be around. We came together at the right time. As anybody tell you, won championship, it's not always the best team. We had a good team, a lot of talent, a lot of character, but we just found the right way. And the University Cup, it's one game showdown. So it's at that time it was four teams. You had to win your first game and to get a chance to play in the gold medal game. We won that. The year before we lost to, I believe it was Trois Rivières in the semis or in the finals. We played them in the semis that first year, and we blew through them. We had a little something to prove. Some disappointment from the year before, which is a great motivator. Went through them in a hurry and then beat Acadia in the finals. And I think I ended up even scoring one of the goals there. Might even be in the game winner. Well, that's what I'll say now because nobody can get back because there was no video or tape anymore. So but it was back in Toronto, and we played in the old varsity rink in Toronto, so a small, tiny rink, so which is great for me, being a big guy, an average skater, but somebody that wanted to compete and battle and work hard. So that group, we just had our 25th anniversary the a couple of years ago, and we hung out together. Everybody came to a game here, and then we went out afterwards and had a few cocktails and some snacks and just talk about old times. So there's still our banners in the rafters. Our guys still meet up and talk, and something for the rest of our lives.
It's those memories that, it doesn't matter where everyone is now in their lives, but those are the times, whether it's 10 years from now, 20 years, 30 years, that's what you remember, right? And I'm happy that you guys got to do a reunion there and go out and kind of reminisce over the times.
Yeah, this past year we had a team that won in the 70s, so it was their 50th reunion. So they had dinner ahead of time. It was great to see some of the older Bears in the building and stuff. Had a chance to go meet with them, and we actually had our alumni weekend. So a lot of our alumni were playing before a game too. So it gave me an opportunity to go sit in the dressing room and listen to a few old stories, share some old stories, and see some faces I haven't seen for a long time. Meet a few guys that I hadn't met yet. But they had a fantastic time. They went on the ice in between periods. They went out for cocktails afterwards and made a whole weekend out of it. And so that's part of being part of the Bears program. There's been fantastic people that have gone through here, and it's being part of that Bears family for the rest of your life.
100%. And yeah, those memories, even though I wasn't part of them, they just make me smile because it's like I love hearing stories like that and just about the camaraderie and how tight obviously you guys were, and any champion team, as you mentioned, they found a way at the right time, and that's why it happened. You brought up you after university there, you end up signing an NHL contract with the Edmonton Oilers. Your second year, you end up getting games there. I always like to talk to guests who have ever played in the National Hockey League, something I've never done. Um, what was it like getting that first call up? Were you able to get your family in? Who'd you play against? All kind of stuff like that. Like, just take me through that day of getting the first call up.
Well, I'll just back you up a little bit. We just won that University Cup with the Golden Bears, signed with the Oilers, was sent down quickly to the American Hockey League in Cape Breton. So I had a good camp and picked up things in the NHL camp. Went down the American Hockey League and we won a Calder Cup that year. So I think this was pretty easy, just go win championships all the time. Won a University Cup, now a Calder Cup, and there was a ton of our guys from that year's team played in the National Hockey League because we were American Hockey League champions. I think there was about five of us started the next year with the Oilers, and at least four other guys that started in other organizations: Anaheim, Ottawa, Tampa, Calgary. So just that group, there was a lot of guys that were at the end of their contracts, and just winning championships and working hard together got that opportunity. So that next year I did well in camp and got the opportunity to start home opener. I believe we were playing the Islanders. Dave Manson was my D partner. Dougie Waite was centering that. Um, Mance, we win the draw. Manson passes over to me. I fire one up to Dougie Wade, who was swinging away. I throw it in his feet, obviously. He picks it up, goes in and scores. So right off my first game, I get my first assist and say, sorry about the pass, Dougie. And he says, well, don't worry about it. You can't give a good player a bad pass. And I said, well, be ready for a lot more of those then. So, don't my Stan Marple, I think I gave my tickets to, and my parents ended up buying their tickets. A lot of guys from the Bears program that were still playing for the Bears. They came to the game and that, so it was exciting being at home. Obviously, being a hometown boy, playing for the Oilers, still playing in the old Northlands or Rexall Coliseum. Fantastic experience for me.
As you mentioned, just to kind of touch on your joke from earlier, you win championship at school, you win a championship at Calder at the AHL level, and then you get called to the NHL and you get an assist within your first shift there. You must have been thinking, wow, this pro hockey thing's pretty easy.
Yeah, yeah, just the kind of the way things have been going for me and that. And obviously, I didn't stick around the whole year. We had some coaches changes and everything else, and it wasn't a strong season for our program. But sent down at Christmas time and an opportunity to keep working at my game at the American Hockey League, keep getting better, and things just went on from there.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, like going on from there, you end up playing for the Detroit Vipers for a few seasons there, which were in the IHL back in those days. And I just going through the rosters, doing a little research, I noticed you played with two guys whose names are very known over here in Germany in the DEL with Steve Walker. So I believe he went to Germany after playing for the Vipers there and won a lot of championships with Berlin. Now he's a head coach in Schwenningen. And then Stefan Ustorf, who also played in Berlin, won championships, was a GM there, and now is a GM in Nuremberg. So I didn't know if you had any funny stories about those guys or just wanted to bring their names up on the podcast.
No, I think I talked to Walks maybe this summer or past summer because a couple of people we know, Ryan Marsh was over there coaching as well, a Golden Bear alumni, and was my assistant coach. So I think he was going to work for Walker, I believe, the 1 year. So we end up talking a little bit and stuff like that. I haven't seen those guys for a long time, but it's great that Walks has had a great career over there. He played left wing on our top line, him, Drulia and Savaglia. Very competitive line, put up a ton of points, played in every situation. Just a great person to be around. Another guy just came out every day and did his job and had fun doing it. So I'm assuming that's the same way he is over there and the way he is running his teams and stuff like that, because that's the way he played. And most guys are that way when they get onto the coaching or management side and stuff. So it's great to hear they've had a good career over there. The same token there, we won a Turner Cup with Walks and I. So there was another championship for us as well. And we had some years where we put up a ton of points as a team, didn't make it. And then the 1 year, things kind of all meshed together again for us and a good group of guys. And we ended up winning the championship and then lost in the finals, game 7, the following year to Chicago, the Wolves and that. So there was an opportunity to win back-to-back Turner Cups at that point.
You could obviously touch on this being I'm not so familiar with these leagues. So the IHL back then would have been a league similar to the like what the AHL is now. Like it was just like another one, or like how did it work back then?
Back in my time when I was there, it was probably a little bit better league, just because there was a lot of older players, guys that were kind of on the bubble, playing in the National Hockey League that are maybe finishing up their hockey careers. Like on our team, the 1 year we had Lee Norwood, Brad Shaw, who's an NHL assistant coach, Mark Hardy. Um, there was a ton of guys that had Pavanka. Bondra came and played for us when they were holding out. Samsonov, that year we won the championship. Sergei Samsonov was with us. That was his draft year. Gets drafted by Boston that year playing for us. So there was some talented players in our league that just weren't quite good enough or the right opportunities for them in the National Hockey League. Some great cities, obviously, to play in. We were in Orlando, Vegas, San Fran, Salt Lake City. So some good spots to play in. Some guys were making some good money, some decent money for back at that time, and so it was good league. Where the American Hockey League at that time was the draft picks, the younger players, the 20, the 21-year-olds, guys that had just come out of college or major junior, or just come over from Europe, guys that they're still young in the programs, in the NHL programs. Obviously, still very good, very talented, very good league. Just think the IHL at that time was more experienced.
And I noticed too, like just kind of like based on your career, like you end up playing parts of 6 seasons there for the Detroit Vipers. And in your sixth season, you end up getting NHL games too. So it just showed, like, I think how, as you mentioned, guys who might have been on the bubble, maybe not have had good chances at certain other organizations, got chances in other organizations. Like, how did your chance come with Tampa there, for example, and also the Islanders?
Well, our owner, Mr. Davidson, bought Tampa. So I was in Detroit for a number of years. Rick Dudley and Steve Ludzik took over the program in Tampa at that time. They were short a couple defensemen for training camp, so they invited me down for training camp. I went to training camp and earned a spot on the team. So kind of like the rest of my career has gone on to just, do my work in the summertime, all my prep, training, and everything else, and make the most of an opportunity. And started that year in Tampa. They moved out a couple guys. They wanted to make their changes. They wanted to put their name on the program and everything else. So played a big chunk of that year in Tampa. At the trade deadline, spent a little bit of time sent back to Detroit. But at the trade deadline, New York Islanders, I'm assuming, were short players to leave exposed for the expansion draft. So they traded for me. Played with the Islanders. So I was one of the smallest defensemen when got traded to the Islanders. It was Chara's rookie year. There was Biron, Mezzi, Sutton, guys like 6'9", 6'7", 6'6", 6'7". Kenny Johnson was our skill guy, fantastic defenseman. He was about 6'2". Went there, played 3 games, put up, I think, 3 points in those 3 games, 3 assists, and then ended up getting a high ankle sprain and came back at the end of the year and played 3 games. And then was left available and was picked up by Minnesota in the expansion draft. So went to the Wild Camps that following season.
Yeah, that was going to be my next point. I believe you were taken in the first round too of that expansion draft, or at least that's what Elite Prospects says. So that's what I'm going to go off. But obviously that was a unique time with these teams coming in, and as you mentioned, like some players would have been exposed for that draft. Someone like yourself who had gotten chances in certain places, and were you happy to be picked up in that expansion draft and happy to kind of have a fresh start?
Well, I enjoyed my time in New York. We had Butch Goring was our coach. I thought he did a fantastic job and enjoyed my time there. Um, was looking forward to opportunity, another chance to go to an NHL camp, another team, try and make it from there. Was sent down right in the first cuts, so they had a strong group. They were able to pick and throughout the entire National Hockey League and other players and stuff like that. And so that's kind of where I started getting back into my coaching. And that was Todd McClellan's first year pro coaching out of the Western Hockey League. He was in Swift Current before that. And he was the head coach in Cleveland. And Doug Risebrough was the GM with Minnesota. So I got sent down right away, and I knew I wanted to eventually get back into coaching because that was my degree, was in coaching. So just asked Doug if it was all right to, come player assistant coach. So he talked to Todd, and Todd was open with it. And so I was player assistant coach that next year in Cleveland in their American Hockey League team. Obviously, didn't do any of the transactions and players moving up and down and stuff like that, but was able to be involved in practice prep, game prep, all those kind of things. And then when it was time for me to be player, I was a player, and when it was time for me to help out with the coaching and get better and improve my game, get my foot in the door and get that experience. Todd and the other assistant coaches were fantastic, and it gave me that opportunity. Still playing great hockey, but now starting to move on with my career.
Obviously, something that I don't think is as common today as it was back then. But as you mentioned, that was a great opportunity for you to kind of start getting your foot in the coaching door, you knowing what you wanted to do after your playing career. One guy you played with in Cleveland, I have to bring up because this guy was my idol growing up in Peterborough for the Petes, was Zach Burke. He played there that year, and I just remember him, like, he had his famous Mem Cup run in '96 when Peterborough hosted it, but he was a guy just so, like, just stereotypical how you draft goalies back then. Like, he was like 6'6", 6'7", or something, maybe 6'5", and just absolutely massive. But I just wanted to bring that up on the podcast because he obviously was my first goalie love, I would say, growing up, and probably a reason why I became a goalie.
Yeah, no, he a fantastic person. I hung out with Zach a lot, and that a great person, a very talented family. Obviously his brother, the musician, his sister was something high in the arts as well, very talented piano or something like that. Very skilled, very artsy. So his sister and his older brother were on that side while he was on the sports side. So very talented family, great person, good goalie for us. He said he was 6'6", lanky, covered a lot of ice, and stuff like that. So.
Always good to hear stories about him. As I said, he was a big impact in my childhood.
Yeah,
Um,
no, we then the IHL for a bit there. We bounced around different teams and stuff like that. So we're able to see each other in the American Hockey League and that. So haven't seen him a little bit as well, but like I said, that family, very talented family.
oh yeah, I remember, and I think himself. I think he was Oshawa's goalie coach for a while. Then he got called up to this. He was with the Sens for a while. I'm not sure what he's doing now, but obviously, as you said, talented family, and they've had good success. You also have done something that obviously me being in Europe now is kind of cool. You went over to Europe for 2 seasons. Maybe talk about what led to that decision and kind of your experience playing over in Europe.
Well, obviously, getting older in my career, both places I had an opportunity again to be player coach, keep working at my coaching skills, keep understanding the pro level, different cultures, because now over there was more players from Sweden or Czech or Slovakia or Germany or from wherever else. Get that opportunity. So Scotland, a big part of it is my girls were young at that time, so they came over. They were in school grade three and grade one, I think in Scotland, and grade four and grade two and England the next year I played. So that was another determining factor. But enjoyed my time. I had some great teammates, a lot of Canadians on the team, obviously, in both places. Um, some nice cities, some places we'd never been before. I think one of the teams at one point had dropped out, and my wife's originally from Germany. So we went back and visited all her aunts and cousins and everything else. And so we flew into Frankfurt and drove up to Umlinghausen, just south of Hamburg, and toured around Germany and met all her aunts and cousins and everything else, and had a great time. And it was a little bit more freedom to see some of Europe while we were over there and travel as a young family. Hockey was good. We won the Challenge Cup. We had to go to Belfast and win in Belfast. They were the top team that year. It was funny because this year our team went to Belfast for a little preseason tournament, played them once, and then Carleton University from Ottawa here in Canada kind of played each a little round robin tournament and stuff. So I ran into some people that remember us coming over there and beating them. They were talking about how great their year was and everything else, and how they were loving hockey. And then the Air Eagles from Scotland came over and beat us in the one game showdown. So it was a good time back on the ferry, all the fans cheering and Congo line, and thought for sure the trophy was going into the ocean and stuff like that. But no, great experience. Enjoyed my time there. Something different than what I'd been doing here in North America and how the games played and everything else. So just giving me more perspective on different styles, how to handle people, different situations, and everything else. If I could even go back when I was still with the Oilers before I went to Detroit, say there he wanted me to be a player assistant coach with Cape Breton, their American Hockey League team. At that point, I still want to be more into the playing side. So that's when I ended up moving off to Detroit and just got back into just full time playing, not worrying about the coaching. But now going over to Europe, that gave me that opportunity to start moving into that side of the game.
It seemed like, as you mentioned, like your path was always going to lead to coaching when you were done playing. Obviously, I believe the next season you played a couple games and then fully went into coaching there with the San Antonio Rampage, if I remember correctly. But when you started as a full-time assistant, given your years of experience of being like a player coach, did you feel the transition was maybe easier for you? Like you weren't as green going into it?
Yeah, a lot of things you don't realize as a player is how much work the coaches put into it now. You kind of show up when you're a player, get your workout in, get your treatment, your therapy, your stretches and everything else so you're ready for practice or game days, a little bit different, a little bit longer days on game days. But as coaching, it's all the prep you're doing for your team and pre-scouts and development. And back then it was VHS. So I remember sitting in San Antonio with Scott Allen and just trying to tape from VHS machine to VHS machine. It would take forever to try and get compared to the way it is now and how fast and quick it is. I remember spending whole afternoons just trying to get a few clips together so we could show the guys on a power play or a face-off play or something like that. So a lot of it was time constraints on that.
I cannot imagine that grind. Like just you must have
Yeah,
some stories.
yeah. So it was tough, especially when you're traveling and that and trying to find some footage. Or now you just jot down time, so then you're speeding through. If you want to show the guys, now it's at 25:36 on the VHS, so you're speeding through and or rewind, past it and back and forth and stuff. So uh, a lot more of it was done on the board and stuff like that. There wasn't the video, I guess, to tell you the truth.
One thing that I think is really cool throughout your coaching career is you've coached in multiple leagues. So you've coached in the AHL, you've been in the East Coast, you've been in the OHL, you've been U Sports, and you've been in the NHL. A couple of guests I've had on have said, especially early on, that they recommend for young coaches out there or people new to coaching to kind of bounce around a bit early on so that they can work with multiple head coaches, maybe take things from their formula that they like to create their own. Is that something that you, looking back, would agree on? Like you were able to coach in different leagues and see different styles of whether it's hockey development and kind of build your own formula?
Yeah, definitely. Like I mentioned earlier, I had some great coaches growing up with Ken Hitchcock and Claire Drake and Billy Moores and a few other guys along the way as well. So picking up from them, learning what the things they did, obviously seeing things that coaches maybe that weren't so good or things you didn't like, incorporating them, make it into your style, your system, but the different exposure, different experience you can get. So, like I said, those 2 years over in Scotland and England were fantastic because it was completely different for me, something I had never seen before. How to handle those teams, the travel, everything else, then coming back and getting into the Ontario Hockey League. I think probably my biggest benefit was being the East Coast Hockey League in Johnstown for 2 years because I was the only coach, the only staff. So I was doing recruiting, I was doing immigration, I was doing the video, I was running the defense, I was running the forwards, I was running power play, penalty kill, face-off plays, 6-on-5, 5-on-6, make sure the guys' housings were correct and everything else. So for time management wise, that was a huge plus for me. Both those years we led the league in American Hockey League call-ups. So just trying to find players all the time to fill in. At one point, all my defensemen were called up, so I had to move some forwards back. My third, fourth, and fifth defensemen were forwards, so we just changed our forechecking system. And then the 2 weeks, 3 weeks later, all my defensemen are back, and I'm missing my forwards. So my second and my third line centermen are defensemen because back then we only played 10 forwards. So then again, just change it up, went to a 2-3-4 check. Had three defensemen basically stand back at the blue line and gave me opportunities. It forced me to change and be creative and think on the fly because I remember one time we were on our way, I think, to Reading, and all of a sudden I get a call from an American Hockey League GM and they're looking for a player. So yeah, we got a guy for you and that. We're on the bus, we're here. We can drop them off here if you guys can get them. I can't remember what city it was. So we ended up dropping him off in a city along the way to Reading. He jumps on a bus or a plane or something like that, gets to the American Hockey League. We go there and now scrambling lineup, put a different lineup together and line combinations and stuff like that. So it forced me to make sure time management, getting things done, being able to handle all those situations, and then relying on some of my older players. So I had a key group of older guys that would step in and help out, give me some input. Were able to help me on the bench in different time, different situations.
I guess you would have to wearing so many hats down there and you all by yourself, but it sounds like you handle it very well and having a lot of guys called up and moving on is obviously, goes back to you as well.
Well, that led to my opportunity with Milwaukee and Nashville. At the end of that year, during the season, I picked up a defenseman, a good skating defenseman, I think from Miami, Ohio. Played a few games for us. Milwaukee who was short defense. They called me. I said, "Yeah, this guy's been good for us." I had him for a couple of weeks, so they brought him up. Played well for them in Milwaukee. Sent him down just a couple of weeks before playoffs. He played another week or two with us, and they were short for playoffs. And Lane Lambert at that time gave me a shout, and "Do you mind if we take your defenseman?" No, if he can help you guys and be of use for you, and he's going to get the opportunity, and that's what we want for our players, and that exposure and that experience, and that's what we're here for, to get the guys up to the next level. And that next year, I think it was Brad Lauer, who was assistant, moved on to Anaheim, maybe. And they were looking for a coach to run the defensemen and stuff. So I ended up with Nashville and had the pleasure and the joy of working with guys like Roman Yossi and Ellis and stuff like that. So a great group and a great organization there as well.
Yeah, that was actually going to be my next question because obviously after there you went back to University of Alberta as a coach this time and not as a player. But then after that you went to the Edmonton Oilers and I just wanted just looking at their roster, they obviously have the big names there like Draisaitl, McDavid to just name two guys, and obviously Todd McClellan had been there at the time, which I believe you had a relationship with, having earlier in your days. Like, how do you as a coach handle, I guess, those big players like those superstars? How do you work with them daily? Like, if there's any coaches out there that maybe want some advice on that, like what advice could you give them when handling superstars like Draisaitl, McDavid, the Ryan Ellis, as you said, people like that?
Well, I was fortunate with Milwaukee with Yossi and Ellis. Yossi was a sponge and just he'd soak up everything and wanted to be on the ice, wanted to improve his game. He was already a top defenseman. He could have actually went back to Switzerland that year and played at home. Made more money and maybe a little easier travel schedule than what we were doing 4 and 5 nights in the buses and commercial flights and all over the place. But he wanted to learn the North American game, and he just soaked up everything and just had a chance to talk with him all the time and you ask a ton of questions and watch. He was watching other defensemen and then coming to ask questions. And that was the same kind of thing with Connor and Leon, especially Connor. He was already one of the elite players in the league, and he still wanted to keep improving his game, keep getting better. He'd watch other players in the league, see what they were doing, seeing what he could do to add to his game and work on his game. I know when I was on the ice with the Oilers, the assistant coaches, we'd be out early, and Connor maybe would play 25 minutes the night before, and all of a sudden I look behind me, next guy in line, it's Connor. At the end of the, we'd practice for 30 minutes or whatever, and then we'd do some skills. So the assistant coaches would stay out and do skills as well. Next thing I look over, and there's Connor again, Leon there, coming to work on extra skill work. So for me, I've been fortunate in that side. A lot of those high-end guys, the elite players like Connor and Leon and Roman Yossi, they've been self-motivated and driven and very passionate about the game, and they weren't satisfied where they're at, even though they were elite players. They wanted to keep improving, keep getting better, keep pushing themselves. So when you got players like that, and especially when they're your leaders, it makes everybody else kind of step up and step in line and want to make sure that they're working at their game as well.
That's very true, and I think that's a good lesson out there for any of the younger listeners that even players, I'll use McDavid example, best player in the game, still out there every day trying to get better, believes he can get better, work on the little things, little skills and stuff like that, and show also that leadership that he's out there early and willing to do these things. So everyone should, as you said, get in line and follow them in a sense, which I think is a big testament to him as an athlete and also as a person. Um, After Edmonton, there you end up going back to University of Alberta as head coach, where you've been since that time. You've won a couple championships too, so it seems like everywhere you go, there's championships, whether it's a player or a coach. Um, Maybe talk about like what's kind of your coaching philosophy and maybe the types of players that you're looking to recruit at the University of Alberta.
Yeah, well, I had the 3 year sabbatical with the U of A, so I was fortunate to be able to come back and coach the Bears program. The two championships we won were the two just before I went to the Oilers. We had an opportunity to go for the third, but I ended up moving on with the Oilers. But it's been great people for us here. It's U of A academics is a big part of our program. We want players to excel at both. There's been obviously a lot of our players that didn't have the academic standard when they first applied. A number of our players over the time have had to upgrade become eligible to get into the U of A and accepted in registration. But they've done that work. So those are the same kind of guys that we're looking for here, academically or on the ice. Guys that want to keep improving, want to keep getting better, want to keep pushing themselves, finding different ways to get better as a person or as an athlete, um, and keep challenging themselves, finding ways to get better one way or the other, or hopefully a combination. When Coach Drake was here, it wasn't about the hockey player, it was about the person. How do you become a better person? And that's what we try and carry over. A lot of the stuff that Coach Drake and Billy Moores have done with this program over the years that they were here. So for us, it's about getting quality people in. Sometimes we don't get the most skilled just because of the academic side, and some guys maybe don't want to push as hard. Obviously, we've had some very talented players come through our program as well. You got Noah Philp, who's playing with the Edmonton Oilers right now, that we coached here with the Golden Bears. There was Derek Ryan before, so there's still guys making that jump from this league, from the Canada West U Sport League, and still making the pro level and the rare occasion the NHL level. And those are the guys we want. They're going to put the time in the gym. For like example, Noah Philp, we talked to him about getting that quickness, that explosiveness, and that's what was holding him back. And he spent that summer working out hard back home in Canmore, Alberta, improving his game. And then when he came to the rink that fall, just pushing himself on the ice, first guy on the ice, last guy off the ice, having a big smile on his face, laughing, competing, getting better, falling down, making mistakes, but pushing and challenging himself. That's the only way you're going to get better, bumps and lumps along for the team and for him. So those are the kind of players that we're looking for in our program.
Someone like yourself who's been involved or been around the CIS or U Sports route for a long time, as you played it, you've coached it on two different occasions. How have you seen the league change over the years? Because like it seemed like when you played, like for me from the outside, a lot of guys would go to their school and could still move on and play pro. And I felt like there might have been a time maybe 15 years ago where it wasn't as common. There was maybe a stigma against it where it was, oh, you're going to go play CIS, like you're done kind of thing. Where nowadays you see guys playing CIS and going on and playing pro. And I brought this example up multiple times. There's two guys from CIS who are in my league right now that have done well. Like we have Eric Uba on our team who played CIS last year. And then also the first place team has a guy from University of New Brunswick who came here on a chance and just earned himself a 2-year extension because he is having such a good year. I think he's second in their team in scoring. Have you seen a lot of change, a lot of fluctuation over the years, or what's your thoughts on that?
Well, our league's overlooked. A lot of people don't realize how good it is. We're getting the top players from the Western Hockey League that aren't signing NHL contracts or American Hockey League contracts. A lot of our guys had almost 100 points in the Western Hockey League. Though even the one year we got a defenseman from Sweden who played on their under 18 team. And stuff like that. So we're getting elite players and good players and people here. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't realize how good our league is. Part of that's we don't promote it well enough as well. So as a group for U Sport, we need to be promoting our game a lot more and getting it out in public so people can see how good our hockey actually is. We only play the 28 games, so every league game's like a playoff game because every point is huge in the standings for home ice, especially in Canada West. If you're the first place team, you get to stay at home for the entire playoffs. You don't travel at all. So it makes for intense, urgent, high-paced games. You don't have the TV timeouts and all the extra stoppages, so we're done in a couple hours worth. For the Bears program, guys have always kind of, I can only speak for us. Unfortunately, there's a few programs maybe that not as committed on the hockey side. For our program, we want guys that do well at both. One year we had 4 guys in engineering on our team, playing on our team. So the academic schedule for engineering is very heavy. They were able to be elite academic and elite athletic as well. We've had a ton of medical doctors go through. We had one by last year, we won our last championship. He couldn't practice Tuesdays and Thursdays because he had a lab. And if he missed that medicine, he wasn't passing. He wasn't getting his doctor's degree. So he'd miss practice, and I'd see him the next day or that morning in the Butterdome running stairs and making sure he was set and ready. And he was one of our top 6 defensemen, and he played every Friday and Saturday. Was a big contributor to us winning a national title. So for us in that we keep trying to push our guys in our program and promote them. We've had the Phil brothers here that have come through recently, have played National Hockey League. Sawchenko, another goaltender that's played some NHL games. Uh, so we try and push our guys to promotion. We get that exposure. We get a lot of NHL exposure with us. We've had some NHL GMs, assistant GMs come to our games and that. So for us, we try and get it out there and promote. And as a league, we got to keep doing that as well and keep pushing and promoting because there is, as you said, there's talented players throughout U Sport and all the different teams and being able to get that opportunity. Some of it's got to get break. You got to stay patient. You got to keep working at it. And when you get that chance, being able to take advantage of it.
No, that's very true. And as I said, I didn't when I said that I didn't mean any offense to it, but it just seems like as you mentioned, maybe the exposure isn't there right now, the promotion of the league and stuff like that. Another thing I wanted to ask you about is obviously, as you know, the new rule that kind of changed there with the major junior players and being able to go NCAA after playing there. Like when we were growing up, or at least when I was growing up, it was one way or the other, either going major junior or going NCAA, whatever it is. How do you think that's going to change or affect maybe the recruiting for U Sports?
Well, right now, a lot of the guys that we would have been talking to and the Ontario teams and the Maritime teams from the Quebec League and Ontario Hockey League and the Western Hockey League for us have already committed to NCAA teams. A lot of the teams I see that they've committed to aren't the high-end teams that are challenging for national titles all the time. So for me right now, it's kind of like the shiny new penny, the new thing, something to see and experience. But just seeing the portal and the amount of players, the amount of emails I get every summer from athletes that have gone down, were promised this and this and this, and not getting it, and all of a sudden the coach changes or whatever the case may be, the costs and everything else, and now they're in the portal trying to find places to play in that. So it's going to be adjustment for a year or two, kind of a growth and see what's going to happen out of it. After a couple of years, hopefully things settle down a little bit. As a league, we're looking at doing some changes to our league and our eligibility, who we can bring in to allow us to bring in more talent and keep our skill level high. So right now we're in discussions with U-Sport. I represent the Canada West coaches here, and so I'm involved in all those meetings and discussions. And so we're hopefully passing some new bylaws here shortly that will allow us to bring in some talented players that maybe the ones that we're losing that are going to NCAA right now we'll pick up and find from other places.
No, I definitely agree with that like analogy. Like it's basically the shiny new toy and everyone wants to do it. And as you mentioned, I've seen a lot of commitments on elite prospects every day, and it's not like it's the North Dakotas or the Michigans. It's the lower schools right now that are having to jump on those athletes because it obviously is a bigger pool window for them, which I totally understand. But yeah, I'm very curious where in 5 to 10 years now, if they're gonna look back and be like, that was a good idea what we did, or did it really improve our hockey? Because I had a guest on it. He's a famous NCAA coach, and he said he didn't like the rule because he liked how hockey was the only sport that had multiple avenues to get to the NHL. So you have the major junior route, you would have the NCAA route, you would have the U Sports route, and then you would have like the European route. So we were a unique sport where, as for the example of the NBA, it's like you go either it's high school if you're an elite person, you can get to the NBA, or you go college and then you go there. Like that was kind of the 1-2 path where we had four or five. So yeah, like yourself, I'm very curious to see where it is in 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, I want to see what happens in the CHL because I'm assuming there's going to be some 18, 19-year-olds poached as well by these NCAA schools. So when the season ends here this spring, it's going to be interesting to see what happens on that front. On the other side of it, it's allowed them to get players that maybe wouldn't consider playing in the CHL. Now they're playing for their CHL teams and stuff like that. So we'll see. It's kind of everybody's up in the air trying to figure it out. I know I have a close friend who's high up in USA Hockey, and at least he's not pleased with it, and it's affecting their junior programs down in the USHL and the North American Hockey League and that as well. So some of those guys that would have stayed playing there now jumped up to the CHL and stuff like that. So there's a lot of different groups and people affected, and um, a lot of it's a waiting game right now and waiting to see what happens, how it all shakes down.
Yeah, as you mentioned, a lot of those tier two junior leagues, I would say, are gonna taking the effects right now, and a lot of guys are leaving. So hopefully we find a solution there. Last one for you here. You've been very generous with your time, and I always like to end on this one for my guests. What is one piece of advice or multiple pieces of advice, if you have it, that you would give the younger generation, the younger listeners out there?
Big thing is keep learning, keep pushing yourself, keep finding new ways. Don't be satisfied where you're at. So, talked about Connor and Roman Yossi and those guys finding new ways to getting better. It might be little things from face-offs to whatever the case may be, or as a coach, finding new ways. So, I'm always going to coaching clinics, talking to different people, thinking, watching NHL games. I've watched quite a few games over from Europe, see if there's anything I can bring over from there when the Spangler Cup, especially on, and watching games like that. And every so often they'll have a game on TSN I can watch live. But I also have some friends over there that will send me some footage if I'm looking for certain things in that. I had the one coach send me their 5-on-6. Even on the big ice surface, they went like they would in North America and were very aggressive and all over. So for me, it was really surprising to see and seeing that it worked over on that bigger ice surface, and they were very effective at it. So big thing is keep pushing yourself, keep challenging yourself. There's always somehow, some way you can get better as an athlete, as a person, and realize that there's going to be the ups and downs, and you're going to have some tough days, and plow through them. Keep your head down, keep working, have great attitude, and in my situations, I've been fortunate. A lot of good things have come my way.
And as you mentioned, you've won a lot of championships. So clearly, the way you go about things is obviously a good way and the right way because it allows you to have the success you had. Couldn't have said it better
I've
myself,
been
your advice.
lucky to have been surrounded by some great people. As you know, it isn't one person or whatever winning championships and that. So on the coaching side and the staff or players that I've had, and that's playing wise, it's the coaches we've had, the management we've had, and everything else, and all the different players that we've played with. So the other key, I guess, surrounding yourself with good people, having good people around you that you can talk to and listen to. Billy Moores, who I mentioned earlier, who was my head coach for 3 years with the Golden Bears and went and coached in the National Hockey League, coached in Japan and a few different places as well afterwards when he left the Bears. He still comes to our practices on Tuesdays usually. And I'll sit and pick his brain, and because he's an arm lengths away from our team, but sees enough to know he's at all our home games, so I can talk to him and ask him what he sees and what he's thinking and everything else. So realizing I don't have all the answers, and there's different ways of looking at problems, and having people like that where you can talk to and discuss things and come up with better ways and better solutions, or a new solution, something different that might work for your group.
100%. I appreciate you taking the time here and kind of going down memory lane with me and obviously sharing your advice for the younger generation out there. As you mentioned, you guys are close to playoffs here, so I wish you guys luck. Hopefully, you can bring home another championship there for the Golden Bears. And yeah, thanks again for doing this, and I hope we can stay in touch.
Yeah, we're working on our 17th, so it'll be a good grind. Our league has gotten better, so which is good. The coaching's been better and the teams have been better, and it pushes us to get better. So one game left, a bye weekend, and then playoffs.
Then the fun
So I
begins.
appreciate you having me on, Andrew. It's been a fantastic experience.
Thank you so much again. And for those listening, if anyone's in the Alberta area, wants to see some good U Sports hockey, I've always mentioned it is a lot better than it gets credit for. I've been to games myself, and you can see why now a lot of these guys are going on and having pro careers, whether it's in North America or in Europe, especially the guys I mentioned who are playing over here in Germany and doing very well. But thanks again for listening. Until next week, cheers and ciao.